Okay, guys, I'm going to be reviewing X-Men Days of Future Past. X-Men Days of Future Past is my favorite X-Men film. Why is it my favorite X-Men film? Because it has everything you want from not just an X-Men film, not just a comic book film, but practically everything you want just from a film. I mean, this film can have, the story is brilliant. Where it's there's so much room for error in not only just any time travel film, but a time travel film like this, talking about, the death of the Sentinel creator, studying Mystique, integrating world history or at least U.S. history at the time, especially where things ended with First Class, where things ended with Last Stand, just introducing a whole new idea with the Sentinels, having, all the X-Men together, fixing all the stuff. There was so much room for error, but they nailed it. Where I love how it's not like your typical X-Men film. I describe the past, which most of the film takes place, as because it's not a usual X-Men film. The past does not have a big team. It doesn't have a big final battle with 6 X-Men with all in black leather suits. No, that's what the future is. So I describe the past as not an X-Men film, but a story that takes place in the X-Men universe. The future is where that X-Men takes place, and it's done brilliantly. Seeing the X-Men work together was great, because I love some of my favorite moments from X2 and X-Men were seeing the X-Men work together, because you got a lot of that, particularly the final battles of each film, or the final fights of each film, whatever. And I think Bryan Singer knows how to. I love how this really feels like X-Men, X2, and First Class all together. And it does. There's not an ounce of fat in this film. And it's and I tell you this before because it's this film is not a 2.5-hour film. This film is not a 3-hour film. But yet the amount of story in this film, the amount of characters, and while yes, the future does not get big story beats, not every character even has, Colossus has one line of dialogue, but I love his action sequences. Bishop does not get much to do as far as story, but I love, him getting sent back in time. I love his shooting and then absorbing Storm's power. Storm doesn't really, do much story-wise. She still gets shooting the action, just gets such an iconic stab in the chest, or whatever, shocking kill. But yet the past delivers that iconic story, where there's not a lot of action sequences, but the story carries it. One of my favorite moments in the film is one of the most intense and intriguing and exciting moments in the whole film, but it doesn't involve Wolverine kicking ass, which he still does in this film. It doesn't involve Beast doing a backflip or anything. It's just Charles and Eric hashing out their differences. And what I love is they really had 3 different ideologies on this mutant problem and the humans hating them. You have Charles, Eric, and then Raven, or Mystique. And everybody's oh, Mystique's torn between them. She's not. I think Charles's ideology has always been, let's bring peace. I don't want to fight the humans. I just want mutants to be accepted, and for humans and mutants alike to feel accepted together. Hold on. So Charles is let's make peace. Humans and mutants piece together. Now, Eric, or Magneto, whatever you want to call him, his perspective is mutant supremacy. Mutant supremacy. Mutants should rule the humans. Mutants should have more power than the mutants, or than the humans. Mutants should have more authority than humans, but not necessarily that, but wipe out humans. So one saying peace between them, the other is saying mutant supremacy at all costs. Charles is peace at all costs. Eric's mutant supremacy. But Mystique is not, I want mutants to be dominant than humans. But she's also like, I don't want peace. I think her mindset is protecting mutants at all costs. So it's like her goal was to kill Trask. She doesn't care about anybody else. She doesn't want to kill every human. And I think that's the truth. Where she's interweaving, she's adapting through her life. Literally, that's literally part of her powers. But I think her mindset has always been save humans at all costs, or save mutants at all costs. Save mutants at all costs. Protect mutants at all costs. Where it's like Alex Summers and Mystique don't see eye to eye on this issue. I think definitely Alex Summers leans a lot more to Charles's opinion. But like I said, Mystique's ideology is save mutants, protect mutants at all costs. She went to Vietnam just to save all those mutants from getting tested on in Trask facility. So that's really genuinely her mindset. And all three of them have past experiences to back it up. Eric's past experience, going through, World War II, and being, separated from her parents, and he sees the worst in humanity. That was the key of him being, right in the middle, of all that. Was he sees the worst in humanity. Charles, in many ways, sees the best of humanity. Where it's like, I love in First Class, they set this film up so brilliantly by cutting in between, Eric being stripped away from his parents. Seeing, these humans treating minorities or treating people who are different in such a bad way that it makes sense where Eric's coming from this position of, we have to be better. We have to strike first. We have to be better than humans because look what the humans will do to us. Peace is never an option. You see that in First Class. And then you see Charles. Who in First Class you see living in a huge mansion. And you see getting all the respect, getting all the having so much care. He's literally born into a wealthy family. So to his eyes, he sees the best in humanity. He sees, he's in a great mansion. He lives with great parents, or at least parents he loves. And he's living up, he has the perfect life in the mansion, born in a wealthy family. Sees, again, the best in humanity. Raven has to steal things. Raven sees the best in fellow mutants. So what I love is Raven sees the best in fellow mutants. Eric sees the worst in humanity. Charles sees the best in humanity. So guess what? What does Charles want? Peace between human and mutant. What does Raven want? Best for mutants. Whatever that takes. Eric, best mutant supremacy. He wants mutants to rule them all. And you see those three paths where it's like they're all mutants and they all are tackling the same problem, the same issue. Humans, some humans just do not like mutants. And all three of them tackle that idea in three different ways, but all in all, they care for mutants. That's kind of the underlying truth. And so seeing Eric and Charles hash it out with the metal plane cracking, and then I love the line where where they talk about, especially Eric starts getting really triggered when Charles talks about how he doesn't have his powers anymore. And then Eric says, you abandoned me. You abandoned us. obviously referring to mutants. And I think that was powerful. It was because it's like, that's so true. That's so true. By giving up the powers just to be normal, he is abandoning mutants, trying to fit in. Where it's like people like Toad, he can't fit in. People like Mystique can't fit in. And yet he's abandoning them. And Eric's point is valid, but then you also feel Charles's pain, that you understand. It's so stressful to imagine hearing, like, it's, oh yeah, I would love to read minds. But trust me, if his powers get out of control, and in the depressed state, and seeing everything Charles has lost, mutants, Raven is left for Eric, and Eric is doing his own thing in the Pentagon, and it was just on top of, for Charles, hearing all those voices, all those people, where he can read all the minds at once, hearing all those minds, hearing all the visions, and not being able to walk, was such a stressful thing for him. So I think you feel both sides, and then you see Raven's side. Oh, he just wants to protect mutants, and to her, what she's doing is right, and to all three of them, where it's like, none of them, like, Magneto's the clear, defined villain, but yet it does not mean that Raven is. It doesn't mean that Raven's also not a villain. So, it's like Mystique in this film has great action sequences, like this, like the Vietnam action sequence with Stryker. Great stuff. In Paris, she was great. Had some great action sequences. So, I mean, they all the characters have a lot of great moments and parts of their character and what they do. But yeah, I think the Washington D.C. fight and the final Future fight was great. It was great because I just think you wouldn't expect it. I think the location of having it right in front of the White House was a great idea, and just having them brawl it out, and it wasn't like it was barely an action sequence. More of it was just like Raven saved the Future without killing Magneto. She just shot him in the neck. But that's just so it's just the idea that this is not really an action film. This is not a superhero action film. This is a story film. This is a kind of almost like a drama of sorts of, what do you do in this situation? What do you do when you figure out, for your race, the future is bleak? When you figure out that you have to stop killing, you can't, you're put in such an odd position. The person that will create the thing that will destroy the majority of your race, you shouldn't kill them. And I love how they kind of resolve their differences, but they really don't. And Mystique has to make that ultimate choice, that ultimate decision of which path to go on. On the same time, the Future has magnificent action sequences, like I said, with all of them working together in tandem. With Blink using the portals. I love how Blink used her portals in the film. And both the first Future action sequence and the second one, both were great. Both were great. I think everybody has moments to shine. Well, there's moments to shine, and there's just so many moments. I love Charles and Charles talking, future Charles and young Charles talking, just great. And this film is in many ways just about hope and just about having faith in people you stopped having faith in and stopped caring about. Because when you meet Charles in this film, particularly the past Charles, he's in a dark place. He's in a time where he has no hope. But what ultimately saved the day was Charles having hope, but also spreading hope to Raven and using Charles, showing, and that the fact that Charles having hope inspires Mystique to make that choice. And I think the Sentinels, they're the Future Sentinels give off some very horror vibes, and I love it. I love like even like the past Sentinels, while they're not as cool as the future Sentinels, they still get the job done. And I think like I love this dropping the stadium. I love sending Wolverine into the water. I think like Wolverine starting to claw in the future and having the freak accident, whatever. I think my favorite moment besides that kind of final confrontation at the White House, and of course Mystique shooting him and kind of saving the future and all that. I mean, yes, the ending was probably, other than Rogue One, probably was my favorite film ending, because I love Cyclops, Jean, Rogue, and all those characters, and I'll talk about I saw the clips from the Rogue cut, and I'll get to why I think he cut it, and if it's a good bad idea, I'll get to that in a second. But you saw them there, and it was just great because I love those characters, and I think you could, where they didn't need them to be there, and which is why I didn't care that they weren't there, and the film was still great without them. But I just love those characters, and for the second that they were there, Scott and Beast and Jean, the truth of the matter is, they felt right in. They jumped right into their roles, with Scott reaching out the hand and saying like, saying or something under the lines of "Don't do that," where Logan's gonna try to touch Jean, and then Jean's, asking questions to Logan, and so it just felt like so great, and like seeing older Hank, all that stuff was just puts a smile on my face. That's probably a bad smile. Then obviously we gotta talk about the Quicksilver scene and all that stuff. So there's just so many characters, but they make it fit. They make it work because everybody has a moment to shine, and everybody has something to do in this film, particularly in the past. And Beast was a cool addition, and again, like I said, the Paris scene was great, and Magneto and Beast hashing it out. But again, because of the story, because of this idea of, even though they both want to protect their future, because ultimately they all do, but Raven just doesn't understand what that means. But also, in many ways, Eric just has a different approach to that. And I think, like, on the one side, you could say that Logan's the lead of this film, but in other ways, you could say that Charles, Raven, and Eric are, because at the core of it, they really are the lead. They're really the lead. Because it's like, it's their ideologies that really push the story forward. I think Logan is merely the messenger. But like the location and the vibes of the future and the tone of the future was great. I love the future. The future was like it got very Terminator vibes, but it didn't care. I didn't care because that's what a bleak future would look like. And I love, the opening, the battle was great, and I love that you can kind of kill all your main characters without having repercussions, but yet still, they still die, and you still see their death. And I love that they didn't downplay the Sentinels, because I was worried with the Sentinels that they were going to just be easy to kill and just be mindless robots. But when you look at the statistics, in a genuine sense, not one Sentinel was killed. The only way they got away in the future was, actually one Sentinel got killed by Magneto, or destroyed, because they're robots. But besides Magneto killing the one robot in the past, the only way they got away was either barely or just getting away, barely getting away from the Sentinels, and they had to do, or barely getting away from the Sentinels, or going back in time. So the ultimate truth is, they never escaped the Sentinels. And I love that they can really hammer in this idea of against the Sentinels, you will lose. Against the Sentinels, you will lose. And you really get those vibes. You really get those great horror vibes, and they really make you fear for the Sentinels in a great way. And I think let's go back to Logan, because we didn't really touch upon him. He's great. he was great in the film. He had so many great moments. He was funny in this film. He really was, and I love him waking up and like the kind of gang goes in, and then he has to explain to them that he came back from the future, and then he's like, well, if you don't believe me, yada yada yada, pulls out the bone claws, and he figures out their bone claws, and then he smashes them down. And it didn't have to be rated R to be a cool Wolverine action sequence. It didn't have to, but the story's great. There's a lot of talking in the film, but important talking, because it is very much showing everybody's side to the story, everybody's opinion towards this problem, and how he gets Charles to convince Charles about this is the future, and Beast telling Wolverine about what the state that Charles is in. Like I said, everybody's great. Raven, and I love when Raven was at the hospital. And then her nurse, who didn't know it was her, they were talking. And then they were saying, I wonder if she had a family to go to. And I wonder where she is. And I wonder, stuff under those lines. And, just Raven just looking and saying, like, she does. And it was great. And Raven just doesn't want to hurt anyone. And, she's just, that was great. It was great. And I love kind of like that kind of U.S. history at the time, with all that stuff. And I really love how they integrate, like, especially in First Class and Days of Future Past, particularly Days of Future Past, how they really integrate the U.S. history at the time. They both do with the missile crisis, but this really with, like, it had integral parts with the story, with the Paris Peace Accords and her trying to kill Trask there, because I feel like by integrating U.S. history, all I really did is make it feel more realistic, because it very much felt like this is what mutants would do at this place and time in our history, in our world. So that stuff was great and brilliant, and I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I think the Quicksilver scene breaking Magneto out of prison was great. I love Magneto getting the helmet, because it was just so very X2 vibes. Magneto getting the helmet, and that's what I love. Is it just feels like the classic X-Men with the technology of 2014, with the characters we explored in X-Men Days of Future Past, on top of the characters we already loved, like Logan, like Charles, like Magneto, like Kitty, like Bobby, and then introducing new characters: Quicksilver, Blink, Warpath. I forgot about Colossus returning. Bishop, Storm in the mix. I mean, you really get it all in this film, and I just love it, and it puts a smile on my face again and again. And I love old Charles old Magneto. He gets stabbed in the chest, and then Blink uses her powers so brilliantly, which ultimately her powers lead to her death at the beginning of the film. But anyways, so Magneto's there with the stabbed wound. At that age, he's probably dying. And I love the line where he says, "All those years wasted fighting each other," then extends his hand. And then old Charles extends his. Then they shake hands. And that was it was great. That was great stuff. And the film was sprinkled through great moments and great things like that, and great subtle moments like that, just throughout the whole film. Like Raven, when Raven shot Magneto, the bullet went through the side of the neck, or whatever, the neck, side of the neck, not killing him, but just probably injuring him, Magneto. Then Magneto says, Oh, and this is in the past. I thought you were a good shot. And then Raven says, I still am. Referring to the fact that she didn't try to kill Magneto. And I just think, like, that really puts some just realistic heart. Where she wouldn't kill Magneto. She still cares about him. It was just like, because it's like many people would think, oh, it's a huge jarring change from all of them being friends, or particularly Magneto and Mystique being friends, to them being enemies. They're not enemies. They just are presented with this problem, and they have two different ideologies as to solve it. And even Charles does, and that's why they really are three separate characters, separate. And it's like coins don't have three sides, but it's not necessarily. Maybe it's not a coin, but maybe it's a triangle. 3 points of the triangle, 3 points of that kind of shape. I don't know, like, and I love how they really are three faces of what mutants can be in terms of responding to the world and how society treats them. So this film, and X-Men has always really dived into big, deep themes. So now I'm going to get to why I think they cut the Rogue cut, or whatever, they cut the Rogue scenes. While I do think I'd prefer it with the Rogue scenes, I could see why they cut it. And I'll tell you why. Because I feel like I said that there was not a single ounce of fat in the film, and that's very much true. But one can make the argument if they throw in the Rogue scenes of what's his face, Magneto and Iceman, Bobby, rescuing Rogue. You can make the claim that you didn't really need that. I guess you could, because it's like it would have had to happen after the Paris scene. So after the whole thing in Paris, you'd have to make the claim that happens after there, and it does. It happens when Magneto's breaking out his helmet and stuff. But I guess you have to wonder. I feel like I can imagine some film critics being like, the whole film was great, but you don't need to have Rogue. The whole sequence breaking out Rogue, it just felt not necessarily out of place, but not necessary. Because you could have easily have said, oh yeah, Kitty just fights through it, which ultimately happens in the final cut. But for me, I would love to see, Rogue, and I love the line where she says, "Hi Logan," because they started the adventure together. So it's like I would have loved to have had them in the final cut. And I guess in some ways you could say whatever version you think is canon in the X-Men timeline. You could really say whatever version you think is canon, you could say is canon. Obviously, I'd probably go the Rogue cut. Would probably be. Actually, no, it wouldn't end up being the Rogue cut because, whatever version you think is your version, that's okay. Obviously, I think, like, the theatrical cut is still what I'm talking about. The theatrical cut is the cut that I think. While I think the Rogue cut is probably better because it doesn't change anything, it just adds stuff. And when you add stuff that, to me, are just like, oh, yeah, cool scenes, why would it not be better? So, it doesn't, like, I can only imagine, like, it affects the pacing, I guess. Because I was wondering, why would you cut that scene? There's no real reason to cut the scene, because it was such a cool scene. But then you realize, okay, so you have that whole cool scene in Paris, then they come back, and then all of a sudden you're just going to say, oh yeah, and then we have to do this whole submission about saving Rogue. And it just, to me, while I would have no issue with it, because it is critical to the story, where it's like, I think, in my opinion, having the Rogue cut scenes would work is because you could make the claim it's not really important to the story of stopping the Sentinels and stuff, but it sort of is. Because if Kitty isn't injured and cannot no longer do it, Logan's gonna have to leave. But at the same time, how much of a difference did Logan make staying there beyond initially telling them? You know what I mean? Because, like, Logan's really not the main character of the story. He's really not. And I think people don't realize it because what did he individually do to change the course of history besides warning them about coming attacks? But yeah, he's gonna help out. He's gonna try to save the future at all costs, and whatever that takes, and stopping the Sentinels and stopping all of that. So he's still great in the film. I still think he's, yes, one of the leads. But yeah, maybe not necessarily the main lead. But yes, I love, the Charles and Charles talk. Using Cerebro. And I love how they use Charles' power in this film, because he doesn't have like the most flashy powers. He doesn't have the most physical powers. But I love how they really make it. I love that they really use Charles's powers to really just like the full extent. Kind of Charles is taking over the minds of people at the airport and then projecting himself to Raven, whether it be projecting himself over Trask, projecting himself in the airport, and then trying to freezing Mystique. It was great, and it was good. Where it's like the film is like literally probably the argument for the lead of Charles. He doesn't get his powers to the last hour, and he is still just as exciting and just as interesting as Wolverine, who is great badass powers and Beast and Mystique. So I'm gonna go through some of my favorite moments. My favorite moment is the whole DC stuff. That was great. That was really just the highlight of the film. Whether you talk about X-Men working in the future, the X-Men working together to stop the Sentinel ships, then you got the death of all the X-Men's and them trying to save, and the tragedy that is with Bishop exploding, and Storm getting thrown off the edge, and like I said earlier, the Charles Eric exchange. Eric at one point trying to sacrifice himself for Charles, for Kitty, for Bobby, for Wolverine. Talk about Sunspot, and then brutally Colossus getting ripped in half, and Blink and Warpath. Is it Warpath or is it Warspot? I think it's Warpath. And all that stuff. So it was great. It was really just like a ballsy film, where it's like you might be thinking, we need a big, huge action sequence to make this film work. No, we don't. The story makes this film work. The characters, the themes, and the ideologies of how do we approach this world-ending problem that literally leaves to the world in peril, apocalyptic world, and people who are all in the same kind, all mutants, but different ways to respond to it. And Trask is great, where he's not like a physical villain or anything, obviously, but I love that in his mind he's right, and he is right. Mutants could pose a threat, and he's very right in the courtroom scene where he's like, especially, do you really want to lose 2 wars in one lifetime? Vietnam War, this war that they're intending, again, twirling in history with this. And yeah, we're kind of jumping around, but yes, the Washington D.C. stuff. And so we just talked about how great the future stuff is in that whole final act. Then you got, Magneto's great speech. And you got this stuff, again, mixing in history, Nixon and Trask, and I love the exploring in the White House, and I love the iconic shot of the what's it called, the vault in the White House getting yanked out, just great ballsy stuff, dropping the what's it called, the stadium, yanking out the thing, and Mystique in the vault, and then Mystique looking at shapeshifting into the president, killing what's his face, and then shooting Magneto. I love the twist of Kennedy being a mutant and Magneto trying to save him, but the bullet, which he got stopped, which the curving bullet ended up killing him. I love, again, twisting history to make it fit in this universe, but still having this universe, these X-Men characters, these mutants, still fit in this, the X-Men universe, or in the real world. So all that stuff. was great. It was a great film. I love this film. I've talked about this film for right now about 35 minutes straight. I could talk about it another 35 minutes. But yeah, that's my thoughts on X-Men Days of Future Past. Great stuff. Wolverine against Magneto. I just like overall 10 out of 10 film. It really does take the best quality, because I love the X-Men. The X-Men are great. But it really takes the best qualities of what I love about X-Men, which is them working together. The X-Men always have the best storylines, the best characters, and I love what mutants represent. They represent, I think, probably more like minority figures in how people who are different get treated and get judged. But yet people, even though they're different, and even though they're all different, and they're all mutants, they don't always respond to those issues and to those opinions of society the same way. I think those stuff. So yeah, again, X-Men working together, the storylines, the great characters, the great powers that the mutations have, the great storylines, the way they integrate history, the messages and themes of the X-Men, and just the different ideologies the X-Men characters have. So this film is the total package of comic book films, X-Men films, and one of the best films in general. Stay tuned for videos coming right at you.